Good evening, everyone. We are now in chapter 22 of the book of Leviticus. Yesterday's chapter 21 joins with 22, and it deals very much with the sons of Aaron. Now, remember, we have always been focusing on the fact that God is very concerned about what is tahor, which is pure, which is clean, versus what is tameh, what is unclean. This is God's house. And in God's house, there are God's rules. And the guardian of God's rules are the priests. So in these few chapters, it is focusing on how God is going to ensure that his house is truly clean and pure and sanctified and holy. And so we begin with chapter 22. It says, and then these are additional things to talk about. The Lord spoke to Moses, and this is what he says. Speak to Aaron and his sons. Remember, these are all the Kohanim. How do the Kohanim or the priests make sure that God's house is clean and pure? By ensuring themselves to be clean and pure and by avoiding things that will contaminate them. So that's what these two chapters are in. So now in chapter 22, there are new things, additional things to chapter 21 that the sons of Aaron needs to be very careful. And so the text says, speak to Aaron and his sons that they separate themselves from the holy things of the children of Israel, and that they do not profane my holy name by what they dedicate to me. And it says, Ani Jehovah. Now, each time you see these words, Ani Jehovah, it is to tell us that they are to remember who is God and who is man, and priests are humans too. When God talks this way, Ani Yehovah, it really is to remind them that I am God and what I'm saying is extremely important. What is he talking about? And they need to separate themselves, and the idea of separate themselves is to be uh well, I guess you can say to consecrate themselves, be holy, be, I guess you can say, be clean themselves, and make sure that they do not contaminate holy things. And what are these holy things? These holy things are things that can be eaten. They are part of the offerings of the children of Israel. If you recall, in all the offerings, the whatever is left over is waved offering, and then it's left for the priest. And so there are rules as to who gets to eat what, and they are to make sure that they do not profane. Now, this word profane appears a lot of times. This word means do not make common. My special name by which they are dedicated, they dedicate to me. Dedicate means to make holy. Now, the entire phrase is to say that you priests make sure that whatever I've told you that you can eat, cannot eat, how to deal with all these things, the food that is left over in the offering is holy. They are brought by the children of Israel. You are priests and you are supposed to be clean. Don't abuse the food that is eaten and make yourselves unclean, thereby making common my holy name. Now, Ani Yehovah means this: I am truly the living God. You don't make me like any other gods that you can do what you want. I am holy, so you must do what I say. God's house, God's rules. That is why God is so particular with the priests, because they are the guardians of God's house. And if the priests do not take care of themselves, then whatever they do, they will profane, they will make common, they will desecrate, they will contaminate God's house. And so while the children of Israel are supposed to bring the right animals, the priests themselves are to complete the offerings and to make sure everything is done properly. And hence, chapter 22 continues to focus on the priests. Say to them, who is them? Aaron and his sons. Whoever, all of your descendants throughout your generations, meaning every generation of the Kohanim, who goes near the holy things, which would be the things that to be eaten, which the children of Israel bring to the Lord. While he has uncleanness upon him, that person shall be cut off from my presence. Ani Yehovah. Now we have seen chapters 18, 19, 20, and then now we have 21, 22. And these few chapters keep talking about Ani Yehovah, first to the children of Israel and now to the priests. Why? Because if they have uncleanness upon him, then he will contaminate the house of God, and that person will be cut off, eliminated from my presence. Now, this is a very serious affair. How were the sons of Aaron cut off? By the fire of God. And that's why you have that phrase that God is uh, consuming fire, fire that eats. And when God sent fire to eat up Nadav and Avihu, that tells us what it meant for the priests, that they are cut off from my presence. In fact, it was so quick that Nadav Avihu died instantly. Verse 4. It tells us this as well: whatever man of the descendants of Aaron. And what it means is this: any man of the descendants of Aaron would all be priests, obviously. But if he happens to be a leper or has a discharge, that's where you find all these chapters earlier on in the book of Leviticus regarding clean and unclean, how to deal with some of these skin diseases and the discharge. Well, you must also remember the Kohanim are humans. They too can encounter such illnesses as well. If they are a leper and have a discharge, as much as the sons of Israel are unclean and must go through quarantine, and they cannot come to the tabernacle, the holy place, they cannot make offerings. Well, the descendants of Aaron also cannot. So they shall not eat all these food until he is clean. And whoever touches anything made unclean by a corpse, a man who has emission of semen, whoever touches any creeping thing by which he would be made unclean, any person by whom he would become unclean, whatever his uncleanness may be, The person who has touched any such thing shall be unclean until evening, until the sun sets. This would be what it means, until the sun sets. And shall not eat the holy things until he washes or immerse his body in the water. Now, and when the sun goes down, he shall be clean. So you notice, the sun goes down, he shall be clean. Unclean until evening. That's when the sun goes down. And afterward, he may eat of the holy offerings because it is his food. Whatever dies naturally or is torn by beasts, he shall not eat to make himself unclean with it. Ani Jehovah. Now, that's a long passage. I just want to deal with this in one go. Everything that is stated from verse 4 to verse 8 were already treated earlier on, spoken to the sons of Israel. But a man of the descendants of Aaron are to serve God. If they are to serve God, they must be clean and they must keep clean. Now remember, it was the priest who would declare somebody clean or unclean. And if a leper is healed, then the leper has to come and be inspected by the priest and so on and so forth. So all the rituals revolves around the priests. Verses 4 to 8 now deals with the fact that what happens if the priest himself has leprosy, has this kind of skin diseases, or has discharges which considers him unclean. So whatever is unclean, the priest cannot do anything. So shall not eat the holy things until he is clean. So all of these about touching corpses or carcasses of an animal, of a human, of a creeping thing or unclean animal, a person will become unclean, whatever that may be. So this whatever is an all inclusive. Whatever makes the sons of Israel unclean will make the sons of Aaron unclean. No difference. If it is unclean to the sons of Israel, it is unclean to the priest. And they too must go through the same ritual. The need to be inspected, the need for quarantine, the need to be observed, the need to be examined. All of that. Until he is clean, then we talk. And that's what God is saying. If you're not clean, nothing to talk. Don't even come near. Whatever you are supposed to eat, you can't touch until you are clean. Then only you can eat. Why? Because it's his food. Nobody can take his food. And so whatever dies or torn, what does that mean? It means that these are all animals that is not properly slaughtered. He shall not eat. He will defile himself. So the idea here is, although for the commoner, the sons of Israel or other people, if they eat, they were treated as unclean. God says, if you are a priest, you do not intentionally make yourself unclean. You have a special role. And as I mentioned yesterday, the priesthood is not by choice. It is God's appointment, and it is by birthright. They are born into the family. And because of that, then you realize that they are a special breed a special class of people, and they are the Baal, the chiefs of all the people, and God holds them to the highest degree of purity. That's that is what God is trying to say here. God holds them to the highest standard of purity because they are the guardian of God's house, God's rules. Nothing to be overlooked. That is a very serious thing. So whenever God says Ani Yehovah, they better sit up and listen properly. Verse 9. They, the Kohanim, shall therefore guard my ordinances. Now, this is a reminder that all these charge, all the instructions to the Kohanim must be observed and must be guarded. So they must guard because they are the guardians of God's house. This idea of ordinance is not really ordinance, but these are obligations. Obligations that God imposed upon the Kohanim. Very important. Very, very important. Lest they bear sin for it and die thereby if they profane it. I, the Lord, sanctify them. What God is trying to say is this. They must be very careful. They must not make any error. So bear the sin is bear the error, bear the guilt, and bear the consequences and die thereby. If, now if would be the condition. If they profane it, make common. If they treat the house of God like any other house, then they will die. Why? Because God's house, God's rules, and God's house must be pure and clean. That is what it means. I, the Lord, sanctify them. Sanctify who? Sanctify the priests. Remember when we were reading the book of Leviticus in the earlier parts, God blessed the priesthood, set them apart, and appointed them to be special guardians. They were anointed to do this work. And so God says, I have made it public. The appointment of the priesthood is not a secret. Every Israelite knows about it. And it means that they are under the microscope of everyone, especially God. So God says, I sanctify you. You better make sure you keep your obligations that I give you. Don't make my house common or defile it. Verse 10, no outsider shall eat the holy offering. The holy things that is given to the priest, no outsider shall eat it. Now, no outsider means no stranger, people who are not part of the house, not of the same house. Now, what does that mean? Well, if they live with the priest or is a hired servant, then they shall not eat the holy thing. You see, the people who live with the priest or is a hired servant, they are not part of the same house. They happen to be there. They don't belong to the priest. Now, verse 11 then explains this. But if the priest buys a person with his money, meaning he has a slave servant, this is what it means. He has a slave servant because of the fact that this person was unable to repay the loan or for whatever the purpose, For a period of time, a person can be sold to repay debts. In this case, when this person is bought means he is a bond servant. A hired servant is a free servant. That's a very different idea. Both are very different. So we must be a very clear mind to read this because it is not in our culture. It is in the culture of the day. In that part of the world, people are sold. Now, God says you cannot have the person forever and ever. He must be set free after a period of 7 years. And during which time, when you own a bond servant, the bond servant can eat. That's what it says. And one who is born in his house can eat his food because it is his food, the priest's food. Born in his house means his household. Buys a person means he owns the person. And that's very, very strict here. If they are part of the house, they can eat of the holy food. If they are not part of his house, they cannot. If the priest's daughter is married to an outsider, she may not eat of the holy offerings because she now belongs to the outsider. You see, in the concept is this: a daughter, when married, belongs to the outsider. And so an outsider cannot eat, right? An outsider cannot eat. But if the priest's daughter is a widow or divorced, means she has come home and she has no children, meaning no son to take care of her. In verse 13, we're talking about no seed, right? No seed, no children, and has returned to the father's house as in her youth. Now, one of the things that we may not be aware is that a widow would have a man, her man has died. A woman who divorced is one who has been sent home, right? Sent away or sent home. And so she returns to her father's house to live as if before she was married. If that is the case, then she may eat because she's now part of the father's house to eat the father's food. But no outsider shall eat it. No outsider. So this is what it means. A daughter married to an outsider, she belongs to the outsider. She cannot eat. But if she is widowed or divorced, she has no more man in her life, then she can eat. That's as straightforward as we can make that. Now, verse 14 would be unintentional sins. If a man eats the holy food unintentionally. Now, verse 14, unintentionally means by accident. He didn't mean it. Then he shall restore the holy food to the priest. Meaning, if this person accidentally, it wasn't for him to eat, but he saw food and he ate it. And so, what he has to do is that he has to recompense. This word restore is recompense, repay. And so, this word here would be to give back to the priest the the holy offering and add 20% to it. This is 1/5 And this is to restore whatever food was for the priest with a small increment. Now, this is what God treats as justice. When whatever is available to the priest to eat, somebody took and eat it. That person has to repay. Next, they shall not make common the holy food of the children of Israel which they offer the Lord, or allow them to bear the guilt of trespass. The guilt is avon, and the trespass is asham. It is important for them to realize they cannot commit these sins when they eat their holy offering, for I, the Lord, sanctify them. This is a reminder that they belong to God. Everything they do must be under the microscope of God. And so they should not profane. Profane means to make common. That would be a defilement, meaning you don't treat God's things as special, as unique. You treat God's things like anything else. And so God says, my name is holy, is special. I made you special. The food is special. When you make it common, well, God's house, God's rules, and God will make them pay. And in some of the most serious things, they will be cut off from the presence of God. Verse 17. Verse 17 continues, and then, this is a continuation of the third part. Jehovah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to Aaron and his sons. And remember, these are the Kohanim. And then includes to all the children of Israel and say to them. Now, what does this mean? It means this. It involves all parties. This is the Kohanim. These are the people who would make offering. And they must know. They come to God, they bring an offering. And so God is now reminding them what is going to happen here. Whatever man of the house of Israel or of the Ger, this is not the outsiders, this is the Ger. If they will bring a burnt offering, who offers his sacrifice for any of his vows or for his free will offering. What offerings are these? Well, this would be the offering of the shalamim, the for his vows, the completion of vows would be the shalamim, or free will offering. These would be the what we see in chapter 1, right? Free will offering that, oh, God never said you must bring an offering, but you feel that you want to do it. These are the offerings that God loves the most. That they are not told to bring it, but they are willing to do it. They offer to the Lord as an olah, a burnt offering. And it says, of your own free will, then the conditions here, a male without blemish from the cattle. Bakar, the bakar would be the bull from that class. The key here is male without blemish. Notice without blemish is very key in all offerings. You can also bring it from the sheep family, and that would be a male sheep. A male sheep would be a ram. And from the goat category, and the goat category should be a he goat, right? A he goat. The condition is very clear. whatever has a defect is a blemish. The I guess the idea of a blemish would be something that is not complete. I guess you can say that incomplete for whatever the reason, a defect. Then, if that is the case, you shall not offer it, for it shall not be acceptable on your behalf. God says, God's house, God's rules, all offerings, all animals must be perfect without blemish. Then it goes on to say, and whoever offers a sacrifice of peace offering, a shalamim, to fulfill his vow, or a free will offering from the bulls, the rams, it must be perfect. Perfect means unblemished, complete, to be accepted. This is God's house, God's rules. It's not up to you to bring anything you want. There shall be no defect in it. And so now the list goes on to say those that are blind, broken, maimed, have ulcer, eczema, or scabs, you shall not offer to the Lord. These are all unclean uh, descriptions for the human. And for an offering, God declares this as incomplete, unacceptable. You cannot make a fire offering or an offering by fire of them on the altar to the Lord. You can't burn it for God. Either a bull or a lamb that has any limb, in this case, any limb too long or too short. In verse 23, this would be I guess you can say, mismatch. Maybe you can say any limb too long or too short. You may offer as a free will offering, but for a vow offering, it shall not be accepted. Now, this is a little exception here. Any limb too long or too short. This is mismatch of limbs. Or hoofs. I think that would be something that we can look at as well. In verse 23, uh, a bull or a ram that has extension, limbs that is either too long, or either the lambs that has too short, you can offer only as a free will offering, not a peace offering, but a free will offering. A free will offering is an offering that has no particular requirement as to at what point in time you do so. You can bring it at any time. And this is the kind of offering I had mentioned earlier that God loves the most, because without telling you you want to bring something, and God will accept a lamb, which is a ram or a bull, that may have hooves that is different, or the legs are different. But apart from that, they cannot be broken. They cannot be maimed. They cannot be blind. So for this particular free will offering, there is an exception. Verse 24. Remember, this is spoken to the priests, and then to the sons of Israel, and then to the strangers, the ger, because the ger and the strangers bring the offering. The priests are the ones who would administer the offering. So both must know. And if the offering is not of the acceptable kind, then they cannot go through with the ritual. And so you shall not offer to Jehovah what is bruised, crushed, torn, or cut. Now, in this case, you must understand that by its context, the context says that this is what is bruised is testicles, because we are talking about male animals here. If the testicles is bruised, crushed, torn, or cut, then it is not acceptable. You shall not make any offering of them in your land. Nor from a foreigner's hand shall you offer any of these as the bread of your God, because their corruption is in them, defects are in them. They shall not be accepted on your behalf. Now, there are times when foreigners can make offerings, but it is up to the priest to make sure that the animals are fit for offering. And so the Kohanim is now to make sure that the animals brought must fit God's rules. So the priests, again, are the guardians of whatever comes near to the house of God. Verse 26. And then Jehovah spoke to Moses, saying, this is important. When a bull or a sheep, then that would be a male, that would be a ram, or a he goat is born, then that would be a male goat. The condition is this: 7 days with its mother to suckle the mother's milk. This is the suckling period. 7 days. And then from the 8th day and thereafter, it shall be accepted as an offering made by fire to the Lord. Whether it's a cow, a female uh, cow, a female lamb, do not kill both her and her young on the same day. There are times when a female cow and a female lamb is accepted as an offering. And you cannot, and God is very particular about this, her and her young, the mother and her young, cannot be offered and cannot be slaughtered on the same day. That means you can slaughter on different days. And when you offer a sacrifice of thanksgiving to the Lord, offering to thank God for whatever you wish, then you can offer it of your own free will. Now, in verse 29, basically, it's saying that when you offer a sacrifice, the sacrifice is a slaughter, then you can slaughter it according to your own pleasure. You want to do it not because you have to do it. The condition is this: on the same day it shall be eaten. You shall leave none of it until the morning. Now, what does that mean? You cannot eat in the morning. You shall leave none in the morning. Means you have to eat it all on the same day in the evening. Why? Because Ani Jehovah. So God gave it as a rule. Now, what is the significance? This is a rule. God's house, God's rule. And some cases, you don't need to ask. The priests will have to understand, and the people must know as well. Why can't I do that? Well, God said so. That, I think, that would be the way forward in this chapter. It is serious. God made the rule. You cannot mistreat the animals this way. Even though they qualify to be an offering, you cannot kill both the family members on the same day. Finally, in verse 31, it says, therefore, you shall guard my commands and do them. Then again it says, Ani Yehovah. See, each time it says this, remember, I am God, your man, and I said so, just do so. These words that follows, you shall not make common my holy name, but I will be made special among the children of Israel. Then it says here, I, the Lord who made you special, made you holy. And it says, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your Elohim. And I am Jehovah. The important thing as we come to a close is this. Every time you see this phrase, the children of Israel has to be very focused not to violate it because the consequences are very serious. And God wants them to do all these things because the rest of the nations don't do them. And when they do it, they will be very different. So God says, don't make common my special name. My special name is uncommon, is unique. So if you treat my name as common, it means that you don't care who God is. That is what it means, Ani Yehovah. I am Jehovah, your God. If you disobey me, you disregard me, then you would profane, you would misrepresent my character, and thereby you will make common or defile my holy name. I must be seen to be special, right? Special. I am special or holy among the children of Israel, so that the priest can see that and the children of Israel can do that. They are duly reminded, I am the Lord who sanctified you, who made you holy. Therefore, you must be holy. I brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. Exodus chapter 19. Ani Yehovah. Everything that we are instructed whenever you see Ani Yehovah basically tells them, I am God. I am the one who's giving you these laws so that when you do them, you will make me special and you will behave special. But if you defile, you don't care about my name, you don't care about my commands, you simply do them, and then God will destroy them and cut them up and eliminate them from his presence. So, Ani Yehovah, when we read it in the Bible, is to suggest to us extremely serious, extremely important. God is speaking. He is doing it as he is God. And as man, you do not violate what he says. And so, with this, we come to the end of our session today.